Hello, internet fans. It's your old pal Rottin Roger DeMarco here from 3bproductionco.com. This week, we're going to be talking about Jeff Burr's 1994 film, Pumpkinhead 2, Blood Wings. Don't ever let me catch you saying something unkind about Blood Wings. Okay, so here is the plot breakdown. A group of teenagers inadvertently cause the death of an old witch. And when they do so, for whatever reason, it resurrects a mongoloid that was murdered in the 50s, and the mongoloid comes back as Pumpkinhead seeking vengeance for the murder of the old lady and for the murder of the mongoloid which took place in the 50s. With me? Yeah, it's a little muddy, but that's okay. It doesn't need to have an overly complex plot. All you need to know is that an 8-foot fucking demon sculpted by Stan Winston and then recreated in this movie by K&B Effects is stomping around tearing people in half. That is all you fucking need to know about this movie. So, before we dive into my overall thoughts of this cinematic masterpiece, first, let's take a look at Rottin Roger's Splatter Facts. We have 11 dead bodies. We have 2 titties. Quigley titties. Linnea Titty Quigley. Linnea Quigley's titties. We have them. We have red wings. We have pumpkin shoes. And we have neck eyeballs. And the methods of death include, but are not limited to, torn apart, broken, slashed, and decapitated. This movie is one of my all-time favorite movies. That being said, it is far from a masterpiece, but in my opinion, it's a work of art. We'll go with that. It is unparalleled by the rest of the franchise. In this movie, not only do we have a nearly 10-foot tall pumpkin demon murdering everyone, we have Scream Queen Amy Dolenz from Ticks. We have Scream Queen Linnea Quigley from Everything. We have J. Trevor Edmond from Return of the Living Dead Part 3 and a bunch of other stuff where he always played kind of this douchey fuck, and he was great at it. So every time I see him I go, ah, that dude, and I like him. We have Andrew Robinson, who was the dad in Hellraiser, who was the police chief in Cobra. He's an awesome dude, and in this movie he plays Amy Dolen's father. He's a new sheriff of a town. I always get that confused. Sheriff, chief of police, what the fuck ever. He's a fucking cop in the small town. We have Leatherface himself, R.A. Mihailoff. We have Joe Unger from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. And we have Kane motherfucking Hodder. How can this movie not be the greatest thing in the world? Well, for starters, some of the acting is kind of suspect, even for a cast that is this awesome. Some of the writing is a little shoddy, so it makes things seem very forced. There's a couple of scenes with the coroner. I'm not sure who she is. Everything she says seems very forced, so it will kind of suck you out a little bit. The camp is what fucking drives me to this movie so much. The first movie has a very specific tone, and this movie says, it's the 90s, so let's have some sleeveless flannel shirts and gel in our hair. Just very 90s-y, pre-Scream horror. And Jeff Burr, who directed this, is like super well known for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. He directed that, which fans shit all over, but don't get me started. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 demands respect. He also made Stepfather 2, while not as good as the original, is super fucking rad as well. And he made Night of the Scarecrow, which a lot of people don't really remember. It's a fun direct-to-video Republic Pictures horror movie. Jeff Burr never really got the recognition that he deserved, and that's a problem, okay? This movie, while it has many, many faults, is, to me, the epitome of that 90s horror, right before it got super commercial and everyone was shiny, you know. This is a fun monster movie. And not to mention, K&B Effects. Guys, what the fuck else do you need when it comes to a monster movie with a decent body count? You can tell this is some of their earlier stuff, but that Pumpkinhead design is really well done, still menacing. There is some issues with the sound design. I really like how every time Pumpkinhead comes for someone, that there's like elements of a storm. He brings elements of a storm, very similar to like a Jason Voorhees. He shows up, there's heavy winds, there's lightning, there's thunder, but the thing about this Pumpkinhead in general is the sound design for the noises he makes seems very like a Carnosaur. Like they took a very generic like video game dinosaur noise. Every time he roars in this movie, I almost cringe. But the fucking visual of seeing this giant, terrifying monster really sell it for me, so I don't let some of these minor things take me out of the movie, but it can be a tad distracting. And then another thing that got me with the Pumpkinhead design and now fucked my brain up, I can't unsee it, so I have to tell you, which some of you probably already know, and I obviously, when it's an actor in the suit of Pumpkinhead, he cannot have his head in the actual head of Pumpkinhead. Head and head of the Pumpkinhead, because it has motors and things controlling the eyes and the mouth and everything else. So the actor's head is in the neck of Pumpkinhead. And once you notice that, it's very hard to not hone in on that, especially with things being in more high definition and things like that. Well, now with Pumpkinhead 2, once I knew that tidbit, I see the actor's eyes over and over and over again. There's these two folds in the Pumpkinhead's neck. They're big, black, gaping folds, labia folds in his neck. You can't look at it anymore. You're gonna look and you're gonna be like, fucking Roger ruined Pumpkinhead for me. That's bullshit. This movie has one of those quintessential 90s tropes where it's like the biggest troublemaker in town. He's a rich kid. His dad, is like in a position of power. The dad is like the town judge. And for whatever reason, whatever he says goes. So if his kid's a total piece of shit, the judge just buys him out of trouble. That was very evident in the mid-90s. We were doing a lot of that. That was happening a lot to kind of create these lead guys that were shitty. So that way when they do die, there's sort of a very sweet payoff. You get introduced to these characters that are the leads, but they're just scum-fucky enough. When they finally get eviscerated, you go, yeah! We're hitting that trend where you start rooting more for the monster. Because in this movie, the monster itself is a tormented or a tortured person who is seeking revenge for something they had no control over. So before they became a monster, they were good people. So when you watch a Pumpkinhead, you sort of identify with the monster. The Frankenstein effect. You're identifying with them, so these cookie cutter characters, these cannon fodder characters, you just want them to get dispatched. And that's that changing of the guard we went through. There's nothing wrong with it by any means. It's a very fun popcorn movie. There are some more things in this movie that caused me to roll my eyes a little bit. As much as I do love this movie, there's a spot where Andrew Robinson is retelling the nursery rhyme of Pumpkinhead, and the camera sort of feels like the DP was like jerking himself off, like, just look how creative I'm being. Like, it did not warrant these camera moves. Very jarring. What in the fuck is that all about? Come on, dude. It's a 1994 direct-to-video horror movie. You're not winning any fucking awards here. Another thing about this movie that sort of takes away from the greatness of Pumpkinhead 2, that's a sentence I just said, is what I've heard referred to as a score in a box. These just very generic scores. The music doesn't fit the tones of things happening on the screen, and it sort of feels like the studio was like, well, what elements do we have? Like, what stock elements do we have? This weird trumpet, trumpets don't do this. But I will not let it distract me from the greatness of Pumpkinhead 2. God damn it. One of the things that I did notice while doing my research on this movie is that the Rotten Tomatoes score is a 14%. How in the motherfuck can that be? You people should be ashamed of yourselves, okay? This, while not being the greatest movie of all time, is certainly worth more than 14%. We have a sweet fucking monster. We have a sweet fucking cast. We have Linnea Quigley's breasts, okay? These things alone, it's the equivalent of Dances with the Wolves. A great way to spend your afternoon. This is a good movie, and you people who gave it 14%, we're not friends. We can't be friends. Rewatch the movie. Come talk to Uncle Roger. That being said, I do recognize the flaws in this movie, which is why my rating is a little lower. I would love to give Pumpkinhead 2 blood wings 5 out of 5 blood drops. But the things that stack up against it knock it way down. And so in my personal opinion, I've got to give it 2 out of 5 blood drops, but that's begrudgingly, and that hurts my soul because this is a great sequel. This is a fun goddamn movie. And it deserves to be seen. It deserves to be respected. And it deserves to be on your shelf next to Pumpkinhead 1. You can't call yourself a Pumpkinhead fan unless you know about Pumpkinhead 2 Blood Wings. Thank you, Adam Green. If I have swayed you to revisit Pumpkinhead 2 Blood Wings, click the link in the description and get a copy today. I suppose I should probably get going. Because after all, there's a lot of movies out there, and somebody's got to watch them. So why not me? Right?